Well guys, it finally happened. At long last, we got to see what would have transpired had Mike just hung up on Sandy that fateful night.
That went as well as could be expected, didn't it?
How does it stack up to Scarf and Bow, or just expectations in general? And what does it mean for the canon comic? For this, we're going to have to make a few assumptions, which is a very dangerous thing indeed, especially when it comes to BCB. You see, this is actually a BCI comic, meaning that it is a canon and will eventually be removed from the main comic. But until that day comes, we're gonna sit here and talk about it. So let's assume for the sake of the video that this is actually what would have happened had Teshi written Mike hanging up on Sandy. Of course there would have been more moving parts like how Paulo and Daisy would react, and I think some things would have been dragged out longer, like Mike actually putting his foot down with Sandy, but I think it's safe to say that in general, this is how things would go. And at first, it more or less seemed to follow Scarf and Bow. Mike hangs up on Sandy while thinking about Lucy. Mike and Lucy are happy to see each other. It's a little awkward. Paulo and Daisy are confused. Paulo is angry, but here for a different reason. Lucy uses her super whisper to invite Mike to sit somewhere else at lunch, though the time when this happens is also different. And this is where things split off. Scarf and Bow was more of a longer form thing where the intention was to join Lucy and Mike together eventually. Yes, their bleacher conversation is somewhat similar to the conversation that they have when they walk to school, but it's a pretty loose connection. Mike and Lucy's heart-to-hearts are really sweet, and it's great to see them taking accountability for their mistakes, and Mike making a conscious effort not to repeat his. Lucy says he could do whatever he wanted, but you know this line about him not wanting to hurt her was smooth as fuck. It's good to see them wanting to take things slow with each other and just becoming friends again. It's crazy. It's what I described what could have happened in my Eternal Flame video.
Have there be a sort of Act 4, which sees Mike and Lucy awkwardly putting their friendship back together that buds into a romance again. I think having Sandy come back in some way to tempt Mike, pushing his resolve to get over her to its limit so that he can show he has grown as a character, would have been pretty masterful. She comes to him, begging him to take her back, much like how the cut phone call was, but this time it's in person so we get the full effect and we can see all of her emotions. We can also see how insecure Lucy feels about the situation, but Mike ultimately choosing to move on with her instead of Sandy would have been a perfect way to end things.
I'm not saying I'm some galaxy brain for writing any of this. This is all the logical next step in a situation like this. If anything, it's interesting to see that I got pretty darn close to how Teshi would have done things. That's either a compliment or an insult depending on who you ask. We don't get enough time with Another Flame to see how it would lead to the conclusion of the comic, so it's hard to say if I would have gotten anything else on the money. It wouldn't be the first time I unintentionally predicted something through a story I've written.
Look at that. I was right. Note the lack of surprise.
Yeah, Teshi had more nuance in things, but she knows the characters better than I ever will. I think that, in hindsight, just making Lucy and Mike friends for now was a very good idea. And sure, it could blossom into something more in the future, because the feelings are very clearly there. Looking at Another Flame by itself, it really highlights how much better things could have been, not just from a story standpoint, but from a meta standpoint as well. I've been vocal about how I think Eternal Flame killed the momentum and characters, and seeing this just kind of proves my point. I don't really understand why Teshi made this decision. Perhaps she had one final lesson to teach us before things wrapped up. As this meme hilariously points out, I believe Teshi, for better or for worse, knows what she's doing. Mike and Lucy aren't hopping in bed with each other just yet. There's hesitancy in both parties, neither wanting to hurt themselves or the other, and this would have been really interesting to see play out over the course of the comic. And if the feelings from the BCI are canon, Lucy still loves Mike after all these years. However, canon has one thing over this alternate timeline. One thing not even Teshi could have ever predicted. It's these lads, and I think they're worth all the poor relationship decisions in the world. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I'll see you all next time.